Okay, we're starting from now. Last week we mentioned a lot of machine learning methods, and first we introduced the supervised. Now we will move on to the unsupervised learning for more detail. Unsupervised learning problems are generally divided into two categories. So I want you to have a highlight. First is clustering. I mentioned classification is 分类. Clustering is 分群, is totally different. Also, you will use the words we call that grouping. Grouping samples into similar clusters or groups. This is address the questions of how data is organized and can help identity groups of people who enjoy the same type of movies. So a commonly used algorithm for clustering is k-means. 我们会讨论到这个 k-means. This semester we will discuss this algorithms for clustering. And the other very important and supervised learning methods, we call that dimensionality reduction, 降维, dimensionality reduction, because reducing the number of variables in a data set while retraining the essential information without significant distortion. This typically implement use the features extraction. 变数的挑选或我们叫特征提取 feature extraction, because there may be a lot of attributes is useless with our target variable, and we want to extract the most important features. So this part we can also call that feature extraction. So a common used algorithm for dimensionality reduction is principal component analysis, PCA 组成分分析. Sometimes I think you take the courses multivariate analysis, 多变量分析 will discuss and cover this topic. But in this classes, we do not cover this part. We will only cover the k-means, clustering, because dimensionality reduction is more focused on multivariate analysis, 就是多变量分析. Okay, so a supervised learning, we can also call that predict learning. 好，描述性学习 predict learning. 好。Sorry, 不是 predict learning, descriptive learning, 描述型 learning 好，但是呢 classification 就是监督式呢，就是监督式 supervised learning， 我们叫它是 predict learning， 所以我这边呢要做个笔记。I will give you some note here. 没有记事本。Okay, here. Last week we mentioned the supervised learning. Supervised learning, right? We call that is classification, right? And I give the Chinese. So it's also the predict learning. So this is for 预测式学习. This is a supervised learning, but today we mentioned unsupervised learning. Supervised learning. Is most important is clustering. Is 分群, okay? Sometimes we use the keywords group, and it is this predictive learning. (描述性学习. I think this part will appear in your exam. 这个部分会出现在简答题, especially for the essay question answer. And we want to discover the pattern. Discover patterns. 我们上次有讲这个叫模式 different from model. Model 是模型. Okay, for example, here, discover patterns in data set consisting of a series of input and output data. mainly describe the characteristic of data itself. Characteristics here is very important. So frequently apply in clustering and anomaly detection, 异常侦测, anomaly detection, and association rule. This part we will also focus after your midterm exam. And dimensionality reduction, I have already told you, it's PCA, right? We can see this photograph. We can see the similar part. We will make it as a group. For example, this is something have a face. These are old books. This is a dinosaur. This is some pens. Okay, this is Legos here, right? So we will divide it into 5 groups. So this is called, we just use the characteristic of the data itself. We call that descriptive learning, 描述性学习。我呢，完全是靠资料的相似度来去做学习。Okay, so overall, the origin of the data mining is come from a lot of the domain. For example, statistics, artificial intelligence, okay, and MIS, 所以资管有些会学这个 and database. We also, this is our required courses, right? And the mathematical modeling. 这个就是跟什么有关呢？我们学的 regression 啊那些好，还有 machine learning. We will discuss in this class pattern recognition. 所以 their crossover is in data mining. So it's a little bit, what is their crossover? Is data. Data is the point. 他们共同点就是 data. So 机器学习或机器学习 machine learning, artificial intelligence, pattern recognitions, yeah, and statistics, because our department is statistics. And database systems very important because when we do the data mining, we need the database system and the SQL. 大家知道吗 ？SQL 语法 ，Structured Query Language SQL. Okay, because the traditional techniques can useful because the enormity of data, 资料量过大 the high dimensionality of the data, so we have to do the dimensionality reduction and the heterogeneous, 就是异质性的资料 Sometimes we have a graph, text, video, right? Music is different, but we want to process together and mining something. We have to do another skills and distribute the nature of data. 就是以前呢，资料其实是分处在 each department of the company. For example, finance, human resource, and HR. So that the data is distributed in different data departments. So now they will combine together, and we have started to do the data mining. So we mentioned before, predict models. The task we want to do first, we want to predict the data. Use some variable to predict a null or feature value of the other variable. So we want to use sum as the x independent variable and to predict the unknown future values of other variables. This is maybe our y here. So this is predict learning. Use some x independent variable to predict the dependent variable. The other methods, so this part we call that supervised learning. And this part we call that unsupervised learning. We want to do the description methods. By the human can interpretable. 我们可以解释的 patterns 常常出现重复的。When we mention the pattern, 一定是模式 repeat a lot of times 常常重复出现 describe the data. So following is the algorithm we mentioned. Classification, clustering. This is supervised. This is unsupervised. Regression. We will do not discuss because we have a classical regression analysis, right? 同学们2年级是不是有回归分析？对吗？所以我们就不讨论这里。还有 time series forecasting， 这个是 selected course， 所以我们也不讨论。But association rule 关联法则我们会谈。然后 visualize data analysis， 系上是不是也有选修课？ So we do not discover. Yeah, so the three more important part, classification, clustering, and association rule, we will cover in this course. So we started from here. Now we want to process the data. So I will stop here because this is a paragraph.